Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Ron Paul Liberty Report. With me today is Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. We're going to be talking about money today, and what are they doing to our money these days, and where is it going to go? And when I say that casually, our money, I'm talking about the dollar specifically, the currency. What's going to happen? And there's a lot of talk, especially in the last couple of years, but more so recently, especially in the last 6 months, with the precipitous rise in the gold price or the precipitous decline in the value of the dollar. So there's a lot of talk about it. It's been around, and it's very significant. And the dollar has become weaker this last several weeks, maybe a month or so, due to the coronavirus, against even the other currencies, which is not necessary to show a problem, because overall all paper currencies are bad, and the paper currencies, the euro can't rescue the dollar. They can shift around and move around, but that doesn't solve the problem. And that's why we have to look at what's happening worldwide. What are the financial people doing worldwide with gold and also the dollar? So I want to put up a chart that shows this, because it's very significant of what's going on. See, the red line that's going up high are world global reserve gold holdings. And of course, most people know that the gold price is going up. But actually, the price in dollar terms means the dollar's going down in value. Not so much that there's the value changes. No, but the value of the dollar goes down. Gold prices go up. It takes a time to catch up. It's not always smooth. You can undermine a currency by printing a lot and running up debt, and everybody knows gold will eventually catch up to it. And then there's almost violent switches in the market, and we're in the middle of one of that. There's an adjustment going on, and it's a real significant adjustment. I want to talk a little bit about that later. But if you look at the reserves, this is the other half of it: global reserve treasury holdings. And wow, you see the difference. So it isn't only the reserves going up. You'd think, printing a lot of money, people would still have to hold dollars. But even under these circumstances, we see that the holdings are, going way down, and the gold price is going way up. I think this is very significant historically. There's been a few things in recent history that I think that pinpoint some of the problems with managing a paper currency. Of course, this all started in 1933 when Roosevelt stole the gold from the American people so that he can inflate at will as he introduced, the New Deal. And of course, since then, we've been operating with that, sometimes getting away with a lot because we were powerful economically and militarily, and people accepted the dollar. And it didn't mean it was good policy. It just means that the political conditions were such that people were going to accept the dollar. But I think that's going to change, and even after the war, we set up the Bretton Woods, which meant that everybody would use dollars as reserve currency. That was so-called the setting for making the dollar the reserve currency, even though the American people weren't even allowed to own the gold. So they did that in '71, and since we were the reserve currency and we were still the wealthiest and we survived the war quite well, it meant we could run the printing presses, and we did. We ran the printing presses daily and viciously, and but everybody had concluded something that you can't do forever doesn't last forever, and eventually that collapsed. We printed too many dollars. The foreign holders of dollars who were told that they said, anytime you want your gold, just come to us. Americans aren't allowed to get their gold, but we'll give you gold at $35 an ounce. And they did that, but we printed a lot of money, and they started picking up their gold to the point where we were about to run out of gold if we continued to do this. So that led to the collapse of the Bretton Woods in 1971. So that was the new radicalized fiat currency system for the world. My bet is this is the broadest, most extreme example of fiat money throughout the world, as what we've been living through. And now what I see happening today is the conclusion of this coming. And there's a lot of things coming together. Politically, we have to deal with the Black Lives Matter movement, the Marxists marching in. We have the coronavirus and the reaction to that, which has been horrendously wrong. So, and then obviously we were expecting, and we are in the middle of the correction of the boom period by the Fed. Print the money, lower interest rates, distortion, too much debt, and then you have a downturn. So even without Black Lives Movement and without the coronavirus, we'd still have a correction that we're dealing with. But we're in the midst of this. I think it's a big deal. And some of these points that we'll talk about today came from an article yesterday from Zero Hedge, who follows this issue quite well. So the people realize this now, and they're getting very, very frightened. And it has a lot of political consequences, economic consequences. But one thing for sure, the dollar is in a position where they no longer can claim we're king of the hills and nobody's going to touch us. We've gotten away with that for a long time. We have benefited by it tremendously, but it was all based on smoke and mirrors and artificial stuff, fake news and fake power. But there was some real things. We still were wealthy, even though it was based on debt, and we had the military power. But that is changing, and I think when people look at the markets today and put that all together, they have to realize that we live in very, very different times. The big question that we're posing here today, does Jerome Powell really know exactly what's going on? Does he really know what to do about this? Or is he just following the pressure points where people bail me out here, or whatever? And we may not have a perfect answer for that. But one thing for sure, pursuing and trying to patch this thing up as they're trying to doesn't work. So expect that we'll have some more problems later on. Chris.
That's right, Dr. Paul. And that was a great chart you put up. And it really shows that, politicians and central bankers around the world, they have a sense of self-awareness. They know what they do to the citizens and how they do it. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they counterfeit. And they know that politicians and central bankers in other countries do the exact same thing. So they don't trust each other. And they're right not to trust each other. And that's why you see so drastically that countries are buying gold, because gold doesn't require any trust in anyone. It's not tied to any government. It's not tied to any banks. And that's why for thousands of years, gold has been money. And we try to prove, and hopefully we do a good job, that the citizens themselves should not trust central bankers and politicians. If they know that gold is money, you should know it too, because gold is independence. You're declaring your economic independence by just owning. But they don't want you to be independent. They want you to be dependent on them. They want you to take their fiat money, use their counterfeit money, not gold. And that's why the media will always bash gold and tell you to avoid it. It's antiquated. It's not antiquated, as that chart proves. So it's a good idea to always ignore them and declare your independence by stocking away a little bit of real money.
Very good. And I think the big geopolitical move that's going on right now is the collusion and the partnership between China and Russia. They've had their ups and downs over the years, and sometimes they tried the military approach together. But I think what's going on now is a financial collusion against the dollar and against the West and against the United States, because I think after a while, when a country gets so bold and arrogant and use sanctions willy-nilly, just any old time, not for the solving the problems or preserving a country or something. No, this is just willy-nilly, and it's trade protectionism. All these things lead to a lot of hard feelings and hostilities. But it's interesting to note that this significant collusion started in 2014 when we were very noisy and giving advice to Russia and trying to turn the world against Russia over Crimea. And we're not going to talk about the pros and cons on who's right or wrong about that. We can talk about, should we have been telling other people what to do with Crimea? There's a lot of history there. It's a lot of distance from our place. It's way off there, thousands of miles away, but we had a lot to say about it. Sanctions were placed on it, and the American people were told to turn against what's happening, and then it became anti-Russia, where since the breakdown of the Soviet system, we were doing reasonably well. We were talking and trading with it. But during this time now, the Russians have been slowly slipping away, and they have been dumping dollars. They dumped over $100 billion, and the trade that they've been doing with China is dropped down to 46%, where before it was 90% they were using the dollar. So if you have something of value, people will use it, and they say there's no risk. That indicates the fact that the reserves are dropping. They think it's a greater risk, and they think there's less risk using gold, and and that's happening. A lot of people are buying gold. The United States is not buying gold, and often was bewildered by this. And but of course, when I asked Bernanke, "Is gold money?" he said, "No, it's not money." So when I pressed him on why do they own gold, he said, "It's just an old tradition." But it's not money. But the power of the markets will tell you whether it's money or not. And it looks like there's a lot more people, a lot more governments now saying gold is money, and it's better than what they call money when they use the U.S. dollar.
Right. And the U.S. dollar, like you mentioned, Dr. Paul, it's only been a fiat, unbacked currency for 50 years. It's nothing. Like we keep mentioning, gold has been money for thousands of years all over the world, not just here and there. So what we have in America is our politicians and central bankers, they keep doing the same thing, and they keep making things worse. They're only on one speed, and one speed only. More policies, more regulations, more Fed counterfeiting, when they should be doing the exact opposite. They should be cutting, slashing, stop counterfeiting, but they're not doing that. And if you could get into their minds, they think, well, we run the economy. We're in charge of all this. No, you don't. You're not in charge. What you're doing is you're running it into the ground. The economy functions despite your interference. And boy, in this year, have we got some serious interference, actual close downs of the economy. And, we always say, you have to end the Fed, but we're realistic. We know that Congress does not want to do that and will not do that. But what will happen is the Fed will end itself. And hopefully when that happens, enough people will understand what is happening and what to do afterwards.
Well, very good. And that's our job, to convince people that there's a different way. And the way that worked the longest in history has been the use of precious metals and things of real substance. But, since the Russians and the Chinese have sometimes had shaky relationships, it's interesting to note that right now the two are getting together, and that Russia is really deferring to China and to the yuan. Russia's, obviously they don't have the financial strength to use the ruble as a reserve currency, even though they might use it more in bilateral trade agreements, which I think they have. But they've gotten together, and they're going to yield to China, because China is very, very wealthy. Some people claim they're much better off than we even think they are, and that they're capable of doing that. So that's what Russia's helping to build the notion that the yuan may be an instrument to replace the dollar. That'll take some doing. It won't be overnight, but they may be moving. Just like these last several years, there's been this significant movement where Russia sold half of their reserves, and there was no attention paid to it. And there may be an acceleration, which is generally the case once the world decides, we're not dealing with this in the dollar. That's what happened in the 70s when Bretton Woods broke down. They were giving up on the dollar, and they were panicking until it was rescued again with a new understanding on the fiat currency. But this is something that is changing the world. And we've had an alliance with Saudi Arabia for a long time, since World War II. We had, said, will you give us the oil, sell us the oil, and we'll take care of your national defenses and sell you all the weapons that you want. And that's been ongoing, but it's pretty shaky. And the Saudis are capable of breaking ranks, especially when there was the embargo. They embargoed along with the others in the 1970s. But right now, we see, and it's stirring interest, I'm sure, of Pompeo and these others, that China is reaching out and doing some wheeling and dealing with the Saudis. And this, of course, is a big deal. It involves energy. It involves, if something is worked out there, theoretically, you could say, well, maybe the yuan would benefit from that, because the dollar really benefited by having this oil, and all they had to do is build more weapons, and it would work out. So this, the world is changing, and it will be very dramatic when it happens. And right now, I would say the last 6 months or so, it's been pretty dramatic, but it's nothing what could come and will come eventually. The thing of it is, nobody knows whether the climactic end of the use of the dollar is going to come next month or next year, or whether it'll continue to just steadily decrease in its value in terms of all the currencies. But I think all the currencies will go down in purchasing power, and things of real assets will always keep going up, because I think this is an end of an era, and it's going to be something very historic. I talk about 1933 and 1944 and 1971 as years of big monetary events. But we're in the midst of trying to salvage a fiat currency, and even though they claim that the modern monetary theory is something new created by the Marxists, it's been around for a long time. Believe me, the modern monetary theory is really busy. They're printing like crazy, trillions and trillions of dollars. And people will say, it just can't go on. And things that can't go on usually don't. And I think soon we're going to see that they will be forced into doing something. If history gives us any hint, the direction they'll have to go to is being able to reassure the people who use the currency that they can trust the value of it. And that is why the reforms generally over history have used the metals, gold and silver and other hard assets.
Right, Dr. Paul, I'll finish up. I agree with you. You are right that we are in an unprecedented period and pivotal period. All we have to do is look outside, shutting down the economy and counterfeiting dollars by the trillions. How insane is that? And it seems like the people in power all over the place are all on board with this. I mean, where are the resignations? Where are the people, the individuals that say, I can't be a part of this. This is madness. But they probably think that they're going to benefit somehow by it. And, we've all heard of the madness of crowds. We're living through a time of a madness in government and central bankers. That's where the madness lies. And, they think, we're ready to admit that we do not know the future. They think that they can control the future. Great resets. They're just going to destroy everything and rebuild in a utopia. They're out of their minds. So we say, don't be a part of it. Don't add to it. Don't encourage it, because madness always exhausts itself. The truth never exhausts itself. So put your marbles there with the truth. And when it does, we'll be left with independent, sovereign individuals, little local communities that will get back to life with their families and rebuild all that has been destroyed by the all-knowing people of the world.
Very good, Chris. And I want to just close by talking a little bit about the central bankers, the one that runs the show, like Powell and Bernanke and others. And they probably know what's going on, but they can't really promote it now and say, oh, we sort of made a mistake. Politically they couldn't do it, and psychologically they couldn't adapt. And I think I've talked a little bit. I had never really had a conversation with Powell, but with Bernanke, and I think he really believes it. He spent a lifetime, talking about why they didn't print enough money in the Depression, that sort of thing. I mean, everything he's invested. So I think psychologically he can't adapt. but politically they can't adapt either. But that doesn't mean they're not worried, and I imagine that they will be worried, and obviously when it creates too many political problems, it's also an invitation for authoritarianism, but that won't solve the problems either. I keep thinking, well, it's pretty wild. How can you prevent it? And I keep thinking of the wonderful event in 89-90 with the collapse of the Soviet system. It collapsed, and there were no nukes exchanged, and when the ideas are burnt out, things can change for the better. Of course, the consequence of the breakdown of the Soviet system was basically very, very good and exciting, but the replacement has not been good because it's resorted to, interventionism, our type of interventionism, inflationism and central banking and deficits. They've done all that, so it didn't solve the problem. But I do believe there will be this collapse of the system. We will be forced to reassess what is going on, and fortunately, I think we have economics on our side. I think we have morality on our side, that paper money is fraudulent and is counterfeit, and that we have the Constitution on our side. We have all the evidence to show that if you want some sense, but the big problem is political, because if you decided tomorrow you could wave a wand and do all those things, this is it, it's over. No more giveaways, no more printing money, no more interventionism, no more unnecessary wars. It wouldn't be acceptable. People would riot in the streets, and they would not allow that individual to be around very long. But the thing of it is, if they would, yes, there would be a big adjustment, probably in a year. But then in a year, if you went back to sound economics, problems would go away. The problems would be solved. But right now you say, well, you got to do it because you don't want them rioting in the streets because you're not sending their check every month. Just look now, they're waiting for the renewal of the $600 a month extension of the unemployment benefit. And the people aren't going to be happy if they don't get that. And you say, well, how can you do it? Well, you can't do it politically. The pressure is too great. But the alternative that we're going to get is not smoothing out the economy and everybody going back to work. They don't go to work because we have a big recession counteracting the inflation of the Federal Reserve. At the same time, we have this wild approach and answer to coronavirus. So they're not going to allow that to happen. But by not doing it and doing what you needed, not taking our medicine and sending everybody back to work and telling them you get a job and take care of yourself, which would be, unacceptable. What they're doing, though, is setting the stage for an adjustment much, much worse. That's when you'll see, if you see problems in the street now and buildings being burned in the United States and all the problems we face and the problems around the world, that's just going to smolder and get worse until who knows when they'll buckle down and accept the changes necessary. So people have to buckle their belts and get ready. If they would just return individual freedom to everybody, especially talking about the United States, just let everybody go back to work and take care of themselves and be responsible for themselves. Believe me, and you could do that with saying that you can still take care of the absolute unfortunate people that exist, but it's not going to happen. So we have to prepare. The most important thing I think I can do is hopefully contribute to some discussion that emphasizes the greatness of America, and that is individual liberty and sound money, non-interventionist foreign policy, peace and prosperity. I'd say those are pretty good goals. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.